Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're here today to talk about Bill S-8 for the benefit of my constituents who may be interested in following this. This is an act that started its life in the other place last spring, a month or so before Parliament rose for the summer. We're talking about Bill S-8. This is an act to amend the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act and to make consequential amendments to a few other acts and to amend the Immigration and Refugee Protection Regulations. The senators last year recognized a gap in our law when it comes to imposition of sanctions against other countries, organizations, or individuals for breaches of international peace and security and for human rights violations. The senators fast-tracked this legislation, which, Madam Speaker, is not contentious. I believe that it has support from all parties in this House. But unfortunately, it's been parked here in the House of Commons since early fall. And here we are, finally in February, debating it. What was the delay? What's the holdup? This needs to be done. Bill S-8 was introduced around the time of Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. An unjustified and unjust war, I might add, a blatant violation of international law. The timing of this legislation was not just coincidental. It is in response to the illegal invasion by Russia of our friends in Ukraine. The legislation is long overdue. So what does it do? Well, Canada, on the advice of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, can and does impose sanctions against certain states or individuals pursuant to two Canadian laws, the Special Economic Measures Act and the Justice for Victims of Corrupt Foreign Officials Act, or better known as the Magnitsky Law. Now, under the former, the Special Economic Measures Act, Canada can impose sanctions for grave breaches of international peace, gross and systematic human rights violations, or actions of corruption. Under the latter, the Magnitsky Law, Canada can impose sanctions on foreign nationals responsible for or complicit in extrajudicial killings, torture, or gross human rights violation. Now, some background on the Magnitsky Act I think would be useful. There was an American investor by the name of Bill Browder who worked and invested in Russia's economy after the end of the Cold War and after Russia opened up its economy to the world. Mr. Browder made a lot of money, and this drew the attention of the Russian government and in particular President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Browder's Russian lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, also drew the attention and the ire of the Russian authorities. Eventually, Mr. Magnitsky died in a Russian prison, clearly the victim of extrajudicial killing, torture, and gross violation of human rights, to pick up on the language of the Magnitsky Law. Mr. Browder escaped Russia, and he used his influence to convince first the United States and then other countries, including Canada, to adopt what has become known as Magnitsky's Law. This law, different of course and unique in each country, gives the government of the said country the right and the ability to impose financial sanctions against foreign nationals responsible for or implicit in such horrific actions. Now, that's what the Magnitsky Act does. We had Mr. Browder appear before this Parliament's Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development on February 10th, 2022. Now, note the timing. This was exactly 2 weeks before Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine. We didn't know that it was going to happen, although there was every indication that Putin would invade Ukraine. He had done it before in 2014, shortly after Russia hosted the Winter Olympics in nearby Sochi. At that time, 2014, Putin waved goodbye to the world and he ordered his tanks into the Crimean Peninsula. And sadly, the world looked the other way. Now, 7 years later, in 2022, Putin was again flexing his muscles, and again, he was hoping, he was expecting that the world would be looking the other way. And that's the context that Mr. Browder was giving his testimony in front of the committee. Now, here's a sample quote from his testimony. This is Mr. Browder. Quote, as we look forward to what to do about this situation, my prescription is to make a list of the 50 biggest oligarchs who look after Putin's money. There is no mystery as to who these people are. And we hit these people with Magnitsky sanctions. We start with 5 before any invasion to show Putin we're serious. We then tell him he has 10 days to pull back from the border, or we hit him with another 5. If he invades, we go after the rest of the 40. I believe this would stop Putin in his tracks, and he would not invade Ukraine. Now, 3 months later, May 17th, 2022, Mr. Browder appeared before another committee, the Public Safety Committee, as part of its Russia study. Again, note the timing. This meeting was taking place a few months after Putin invaded Ukraine. Now, at that meeting, this question, or a challenge really, was put to Mr. Browder. He was asked this: clearly, sir, something went wrong. Either the Canadian government didn't take your advice or you underestimated Putin's propensity for recklessness. And this is just a part of Mr. Browder's answer. Quote, Putin, looked at our conduct, and when I say our, I mean Canada, the United States, the EU, the UK. He looked at our conduct after the invasion of Georgia, nothing. After the illegal annexation of Crimea, effectively nothing. After MH17 was shot down, nothing. After the Salisbury poisoning, nothing. Putin, was of the opinion that we weren't going to do anything if he invaded Ukraine. Well, Madam Speaker, historians will debate whether we and our allies acted soon enough or used our sanctioning tools aggressively enough, or did everything in our power to convince Putin to back off. Maybe we could have done more, and with the benefit of hindsight, we probably could have done more and should have done more. But I want to be clear, it's not as if we are doing nothing. After the illegal annexation of the Crimea Peninsula in 2014, Canada, using the existing Special Economic Measures Act, imposed sanctions against more than 1,000 individuals and 241 entities linked to ongoing violations of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Our Magnitsky Law, parenthetically, came into force sometime later in 2017. Could we have done more to help our Ukrainian friends? Probably. But today we are doing the right thing. It's a small thing, but it is the right thing with Bill S-8. We are amending 3 other acts and expanding certain regulations, all pertaining to how we deal with refugees, and in particular refugees who, when they present themselves at our border, are discovered to be subject to sanctions under one or other of our sanction laws. Our Minister of Public Safety put it this way, quote, banning close associates and key supporters of Putin's regime, including those responsible for this unprovoked aggression, from entering our country is one of the many ways in which we're holding Russia accountable for its crimes. Close quote. And we can argue about whether the veracity of the statement that Canada acted in many ways to hold Russia accountable. That's a debate for another day. Now, Speaker, I would wrap it up with this comment. I, together with, I believe, all the members of Parliament, we have all been banned from entering Russia. Oh well. After this Bill C-8 passes, Mr. Putin and his oligarchs are banned from entering Canada. As if that would ever be, as if they would ever risk being arrested and tried for war crimes. Madam Speaker, this is important legislation. It is non-controversial. It has the support of the Conservative Party. We've always been in support of decisive use of our Magnitsky Act to sanction international criminals. It needs to be passed soon, and it needs to receive royal assent to close the gap. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader. Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I was encouraged by many of the thoughts that the member expressed to the House, and I would concur in regards to, at the end of the day, there is a powerful statement to be made by the passage, what appears to be unanimous support of the principles of the legislation, and I just wanted to ask the member to provide his comment in regards to when you have legislation of this nature and it ultimately passes, at least the principles of the legislation, that it does send a wonderful, powerful message, I believe, abroad, and provides a message that people need to hear, and that is there is a consequence to regimes that behave against what I would suggest you are not, Canadian values and so forth. Would he not agree?
The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Good. I would like to thank the member from Winnipeg for his comments. Yes, the Magnitsky Act sends a powerful signal to the world that Canada stands up for human rights. If you read the story about Sergei Magnitsky and how he was mistreated for doing the right thing, then I believe the world will support us as we try to do our best to support human rights around the world. And I think that this is it's a good, strong signal, and I'm happy that this is one act that we can pass, I'm assuming unanimously in this House. That too sends a strong message. Thank you.